It was past midnight when the phone rang. At first, I thought something bad had happened. Maybe an accident, maybe an emergency. But the moment I heard his voice, my heart sank. It was cold, distant, almost like I was speaking to a stranger. Without any hesitation, he said, "I'm leaving you." No explanation, no softness, not even a pause for my reaction. Just those words, sharp enough to cut through my chest. I froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I misheard him. I asked, "What do you mean you're leaving me? Where are you? What happened?" But his tone stayed the same. "It's over. Don't make this harder than it is." My fingers went numb. I clutched the phone so tightly it felt like it might break. My chest tightened and I could barely breathe. In our culture, a husband saying such words without warning isn't just about ending a marriage. It's about tearing apart honor, family, and the years of trust we built. I felt an emptiness in my stomach, a deep humiliation that I couldn't even name yet. When I hung up, I sat in silence. My mind was racing. What did I do wrong? Was I not a good wife? Was I too busy with the house, with my family? Questions poured in like a flood, and I had no answers. You know, moments like this make you realize how fragile life can be. And if you've ever been through something similar, I want you to know you're not alone. I share my stories because I know someone out there might need to hear them. If you're still with me now, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because what happens next, you won't want to miss it. The night stretched on, but sleep never came. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying our life together in my mind. We had a beautiful home, filled with laughter and family gatherings. I had always believed we were the couple everyone admired, the ones who had it all. I left my career for him, thinking we were building a future together. I stood by him through hard times, celebrated his successes as if they were my own. And now all I was left with were his cold words echoing in my head. The next morning, the truth began to surface. A close friend called me, hesitant, her voice low as if she was afraid of hurting me. She told me she had seen him the night before, not with colleagues like he often claimed, but with a much younger woman. And not just any woman, a model. The kind of beauty that turns heads in every room. My blood went cold. It wasn't just cheating, it was a public display meant to humiliate me. People in our community talk, and when they talk, they don't just talk about you, they talk about your parents, your brothers, your entire family. This wasn't only a betrayal of love, it was an attack on my dignity. Soon I saw the proof for myself. Pictures of them together appeared online. They weren't hiding, they were flaunting it. Smiles, fancy dinners, expensive gifts. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives checking in, but I could hear the curiosity in their voices. The whispers had already begun. I closed my curtains and shut the world out. Days passed me lying in bed, ignoring calls, barely eating. It was my mother's voice that finally broke me, gentle but filled with pain. "Don't let him destroy you, my daughter. You are stronger than this." And in that moment, I realized she was right. I couldn't stay here, drowning in my own sadness. I had to stand up, not just for myself, but for my family's name. What happened after that? Well, let's just say karma has a way of finding its target. And believe me, you'll want to hear how it came for him. So make sure you're subscribed, because the next chapter is where the tables start to turn. I used to believe I had the kind of life other women dreamed about. A beautiful house filled with light. The smell of fresh coffee in the mornings and laughter echoing through the rooms during family gatherings. My husband came from a respected family, and together we held our place in the community. We were the couple people looked at with quiet admiration, or at least that's what I thought. Every Friday, our home was alive with the sound of relatives and friends. My mother-in-law would sit in the salon, sipping her tea, proudly watching her son joke with his uncles. I would make sure everything was perfect. The food, the seating, even the small details like fresh flowers in the hallway. I wanted everyone to feel welcome because in my mind, we were building something lasting. When we first married, I had a career of my own. I was good at what I did, and I loved it. But he told me, "Your place is here, building our home, being my support." I believed him. I thought stepping back from my work was an act of love and trust. I told myself it was worth it, that my sacrifices were investments in our shared future. Looking back now, I see how blind I was. I see how I poured all my energy into making his life easier, while slowly losing pieces of myself. But back then I thought I was living the dream. I thought our marriage was built on loyalty and trust, on promises whispered late at night when the world felt far away. He would sometimes come home late from work, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his usual. I never asked too many questions. In our culture, trust is not just an emotion, it's a duty. Doubt felt like betrayal in itself, so I silenced my inner voice, telling myself that love meant believing without proof. If you've ever given your all to someone only to find out they weren't who you thought they were, you'll understand the kind of heartbreak that follows. And if you know that pain, stay with me in this story. Maybe you'll see a part of yourself in it. And if you do, don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you can hear how this story unfolds, because what happened next, even I couldn't have imagined. There were small signs, moments when his eyes seemed distant during dinner, or when he'd check his phone and hide the screen from me. I pushed these thoughts aside, convincing myself that every marriage goes through phases. I never wanted to be that wife who interrogates her husband over every small thing. My friends used to say, "You're lucky, he treats you like a queen." And I'd smile, thinking I truly was. My life felt safe, predictable, until the night everything changed. The night I learned that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones capable of hurting you in ways you never thought possible.
That night would mark the beginning of a chapter I never asked for, one filled with betrayal, humiliation, and, eventually, justice. And trust me, you'll want to hear exactly how that justice came, so make sure you're still with me, because the next part of this story, that's when the mask falls off and the truth.
It was 2 days after that cold midnight call when my phone buzzed with a message from my closest friend, Salma. She asked if she could pass by just for coffee. Her tone was gentle, but I could sense something beneath it, the kind of softness people use when they're carrying bad news. I told her to come. When she arrived, she avoided my eyes at first, sitting on the edge of the sofa, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Finally, she sighed. "Please don't be angry with me," she began, "but I think you should know the truth." My heart started pounding. She told me she had been at a well-known restaurant the night before, and she had seen my husband there, not alone, not with friends or colleagues, but with a woman. I almost laughed, thinking maybe she had misunderstood, but the look in her eyes told me otherwise. Then she added the words that made my blood run cold. "It's that model. You know her. Everyone in the city knows her." She said the name, and I felt my stomach twist. She wasn't just anyone. She was the kind of woman whose beauty made heads turn, whose face was on billboards. I could barely breathe. This wasn't just betrayal. This was humiliation. Public humiliation. In our culture, such a scandal doesn't stay between a man and his wife. It spills into every corner of your life. Neighbors talk. Relatives whisper behind your back. Your family's name gets dragged into conversations you wish never existed. I sat there frozen, pretending to listen, but my mind was spinning. Should I confront him? Should I pretend I don't know to protect what's left of our reputation? My father had always taught me that some problems are solved quietly to keep the family's dignity intact. But my heart wanted to scream. I thought of my brothers, of my mother, of what they would feel when they heard this from someone else instead of me. I imagined the pity in people's eyes, the hidden satisfaction some would take in my downfall, and I knew then, no matter what I decided, this was going to change my life forever. Salma reached for my hand and whispered, "You don't deserve this. But be careful. He's not even trying to hide it. The pictures will come out soon." That warning stayed in my mind like an echo. And to you listening now, I'll tell you something. Sometimes the truth doesn't break you all at once. It seeps in slowly, poisoning every thought, every memory. If you've ever been betrayed like this, you understand the mix of anger and shame that keeps you awake at night. And if you know someone who's been through it, share this with them. Maybe they'll hear their own pain in my words. And stay with me, because what happened after this is the kind of twist only life itself could write. That night, I sat in the dark staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call him, to shout, to demand an explanation. Another part wanted to stay silent, to gather my strength before making any move. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. When someone shames you in public, don't lower yourself to their level. Let time and dignity be your answer. But even as I told myself to be patient, I knew patience wasn't enough. I would not be the quiet, pitiful woman everyone feels sorry for. I would find a way to face this, not just for myself, but for every woman who has ever been told to swallow her pride for the sake of honor. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, heavy and raw, but beneath it, a small flame of resolve began to burn. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I promised myself he would regret underestimating me. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. At first, I thought maybe it was just my imagination, that people weren't really looking at me differently. But then I saw it. Clear. Undeniable. He wasn't hiding anymore. Scrolling through my phone one morning, my breath caught in my throat. There they were, smiling together, his arm around her waist, in a restaurant I knew well. The table was decorated with candles, her hand resting lightly on his chest, like she owned him. And the caption? Something so casual, so brazen, as if to say to the whole world, this is my life now. I felt my hands tremble. It's one thing to be betrayed in private, it's another to be humiliated in front of everyone you know. In our culture, when a man does this, he's not just walking away from his wife, he's making a public statement that she is replaceable, that she's no longer worthy of his name, and everyone sees it. Everyone talks. The calls began within hours. Aunts, cousins, even neighbors I barely spoke to. "We just wanted to check on you. You've been so quiet lately." Their voices were sweet, but I could hear the curiosity underneath. They weren't calling to comfort me. They were calling to collect the story, to have something to tell the next person they met for coffee. In the market, 2 women I recognized from the neighborhood looked my way, leaned toward each other, and whispered. One of them actually smiled, the kind of smile that says, I knew he'd leave her. I walked past them with my head held high, but inside, my heart was burning. I can't explain the mix of emotions I felt. Anger, shame, sadness, but also something heavier, the weight of my family's honor. My parents raised me with the belief that a woman's dignity is tied not just to her behavior, but to how she is seen by others. And now, thanks to him, my name was being dragged through conversations I never wanted to be a part of. That night, I sat on my bed, phone in my hand, staring at the pictures again. My chest ached, but my eyes stayed dry. I thought about how easily he had replaced me, how proud he looked with her, as if the years we shared meant nothing. If you've ever been through this, if you've ever watched someone you love destroy everything you built together and then flaunt it for the world to see, you'll understand why I'm telling you this. I share my story so no one thinks they are alone in this kind of pain. And if you can relate, share this with someone else who needs to hear it. Stay with me, because this isn't where my story ends. In the days that followed, the humiliation became unbearable. Even relatives who genuinely cared didn't know what to say. Some avoided me altogether, as if my pain was contagious. Others tried to comfort me, but their words felt empty. I kept asking myself, why isn't he hiding? Why isn't he even pretending to respect what we had? And then it hit me.
He wanted me to see it. He wanted the whole world to see it. This wasn't just about his new relationship, it was about erasing me, making me the forgotten chapter in his story. But what he didn't realize was that I was already planning my next move. And one thing about betrayal, it can either break you or it can light a fire inside you that nothing can put out. And for me, that fire had just begun to burn.
For days, my world shrank to the four walls of my bedroom. The curtains stayed drawn, blocking out the sunlight, as if I could hide from the shame and whispers outside. My phone lit up constantly, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Each call felt like a reminder that everyone knew, that my private pain had become public gossip. Plates of untouched food piled near my door, the tea my sister brought every morning, growing cold before I even looked at it. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our life together, searching for the exact point where things went wrong. Was it when I left my job? When I trusted him without question? Or was it something I never saw coming, no matter what I did? The more I thought, the heavier my chest felt, like I was drowning in my own thoughts. Then one afternoon, my phone rang again. I almost ignored it until I saw my mother's name. My hand trembled as I answered. Her voice was soft, but there was a weight behind it that cut through me. "My daughter, what's happening to you? You haven't come to see me. You haven't answered your sisters. I've raised you stronger than this." Her words cracked something inside me. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a sob. Deep, raw, the kind that shakes your whole body. She didn't rush me. She just listened with me, until I could form words. "Mama, everyone knows. They look at me like I'm broken, like I'm nothing now." She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something I'll never forget. "If you believe you are nothing, that's when you truly lose. You are my daughter, and your father's blood runs in your veins. Hold your head high, not for him, but for yourself, and for us." Her voice carried the strength of generations, women who had endured, who had stood their ground when life tried to push them down. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep hiding here, letting him destroy me twice, first by leaving, and then by making me disappear. I wiped my tears, pushed the blankets aside, and stood up. My legs felt weak, but my heart was beginning to steady. I opened the curtains, letting the sunlight spill into the room. It hurt my eyes at first, but I welcomed it, a reminder that the world hadn't ended, not yet. If you've ever been in that place, that deep, dark corner where you feel like you can't move, you know how hard it is to take that first step. And if my words are reaching you right now, let them be your reminder. You can stand up. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with me, because the moment I decided to get out of bed was the moment the game began to change. I knew then that my pain would not end quietly. I would not fade into the background, forgotten. I would rise, not just for my own dignity, but for my family's name. And when I did, the world, including him, would see exactly who they had underestimated. The first time I saw him after weeks of hiding away, he greeted me with the same respectful smile he'd always had. Our family chauffeur had been with us for years. He'd driven me to my parents' house, taken us to family weddings, waited outside the supermarket while I shopped. I had never thought much about him beyond his job, but that day, something in his steady eyes made me pause. He asked quietly if I was feeling better. I nodded, and for the first time in a while, I heard my own voice answer without breaking. A little. There was no pity in his tone, no probing questions, just genuine concern. And that somehow felt like more kindness than I'd received from most people since everything happened. Over the next few days, I started speaking to him more during our short drives. Simple things at first, the weather, the traffic. But slowly, the conversations deepened. I learned that he was far more educated than I had assumed. He spoke with intelligence, knew details about business, politics, even about my husband's work. And then, one afternoon, as we sat in the car waiting for a shop to open, he casually mentioned something. Something about a deal my husband had made that sounded questionable. I froze for a moment, realizing he probably knew a lot more than he was letting on. He had been quietly observing for years. The phone calls, the late-night meetings, the unexplained trips. That was when the idea first began to form in my mind. Not out of romance, no, I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for power, for control, for a way to take back the dignity he had tried to strip from me. And the man sitting behind the wheel might just be the key. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual, ironed a dress I hadn't worn in months, and put on light makeup. When I walked outside, I saw the surprise flicker in his eyes before he smiled. I told him we'd be taking the long way to my parents' house. I wanted to be seen. In our society, word travels fast, faster than any car. When people see a woman, freshly dressed, stepping out of her home with confidence, they notice. And when she's being driven around by a man who isn't her husband, oh, they talk. I began going out more often, to the market, to visit relatives, even to places I hadn't been in years. Every time he was there, opening the door for me, carrying my bags, speaking to me with the kind of respect that made me feel seen again. We would laugh at small things, the kind of laughter I thought I'd forgotten. I didn't need to post pictures. I didn't have to say a word. People saw, and I knew they would tell him. I knew the whispers would reach his ears the same way they had reached mine when he flaunted his new relationship. If you've ever been in a position where someone tried to make you small, you'll understand. Sometimes you don't need to fight them with anger. Sometimes all you have to do is live in a way that reminds them you're untouchable. If you're still listening, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with me, because what happened next took even me by surprise. What started as a quiet act of defiance was about to turn into something far bigger. I didn't know it yet, but the chauffeur's role in my life was about to change everything for both of us and for the woman my husband left me for. It started subtly, a picture here, a passing comment there. I never posted anything directly. I didn't have to. The world has a way of sharing stories for you when it senses there's something worth talking about. One afternoon, my cousin snapped a photo of me at a cafe. I was wearing a soft cream dress, hair done, smile effortless. In the corner of the picture, almost by accident, you could see the chauffeur standing near the car, watching for my signal. She posted it with nothing more than a heart emoji. Within hours, it spread. The following week, another relative shared a photo from a family gathering. I was laughing, genuinely laughing for the first time in months. And again, there he was in the background holding a tray of tea. This time, the comments began. She's glowing, life suits her. And of course, the quiet messages to my ex. We saw her, she looked happy, not like someone who's been abandoned. I didn't need to hear it from him to know it was working. Friends who still spoke to him told me about the shift in his tone, how he started asking questions about me, how his jaw tightened whenever someone mentioned the chauffeur. It was ironic, really. Here he was, living openly with his model, parading her like a trophy, yet somehow he still cared enough to feel jealous. That's the thing about men like him. They can throw you away, but the moment they think someone else values you, they remember what they lost. One evening, as I was leaving a small charity event, I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. I caught a glimpse of him behind the wheel, watching. He didn't approach, didn't say a word, but I saw it in his eyes, that restless fire of a man who thought he had control, realizing it was slipping. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who noticed. The model began to feel it too. She saw the way his mood soured when he scrolled through his phone. She saw the way his gaze wandered when certain names came up in conversation. In her world, beauty is power. But power fades quickly when a man's attention starts to drift. A friend of mine who happened to know her said she had started asking questions about me. Who I was seeing, where I was going, why my name kept appearing in conversations that should have been about her. It didn't take long for the insecurity to set in. And I'll admit, knowing she felt even a fraction of the doubt and fear I had once felt was a satisfaction I didn't expect. It wasn't just revenge against him anymore. It was a quiet reclaiming of my dignity, piece by piece. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been left for someone better, only to rise higher than before, you know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. Share the story if you felt it, because trust me, what's coming next is even sweeter. This was no longer about appearances or whispered gossip. This was a shift in the balance of power. He was watching me, she was doubting him, and I was finally breathing again. Not because they were suffering, but because I had learned how to live without their approval. Still, a part of me knew the best was yet to come, because life has a way of delivering the perfect ending, and theirs was just around the corner. It began quietly, almost too quietly to notice at first. The model, who had once clung to his arm like a prize, started to loosen her grip. Friends whispered that she no longer posted as many pictures with him, that her captions had lost their sparkle. In the photos she did share, her smile seemed more like a performance than the effortless glow she used to show off. The truth was simple and ugly. She had stepped into his life thinking he was a man of endless wealth, the type who could spoil her without limits. At first, he played the part well. Dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend getaways, gifts wrapped in gold ribbon. But a life built on appearances can't hide its cracks for long. Soon, the gifts became smaller, the dinners less frequent. He began making excuses about business being slow, about needing to save for bigger investments. And to a woman who had been promised the world, this sudden tightening felt like betrayal. The sparkle in her eyes faded into calculation. And while he was too busy keeping tabs on me, she was noticing other things that had nothing to do with money. The chauffeur. She saw him at events, always polite, always composed, never overstepping. He treated her with the same respect he gave everyone, but there was a warmth in his tone that her partner lacked. When he opened the car door for her or offered her a drink, it wasn't part of a performance. It was genuine. One afternoon, after a heated argument with my ex over yet another canceled dinner, she asked the chauffeur to take her for a drive. He hesitated, but she insisted, saying she needed fresh air. They drove along the coast, windows down, the scent of the sea mixing with her perfume. She asked him questions about his life, his dreams, and for the first time in a while, someone was actually listening to her without judgment or expectation. That drive turned into a habit. Short trips here and there, conversations that lasted long after they'd reached their destination. She began to see him differently, not as the driver, but as a man who carried himself with quiet dignity, a man whose presence was steady and safe. It wasn't planned. I hadn't orchestrated this part, but when I heard about it later, I couldn't help the small, satisfied smile that spread across my face. Life has a way of delivering justice without you having to lift a finger. And here's the thing. She wasn't spending time with him to spite my ex. She was simply drawn to what she had been missing. Honesty, kindness, and a sense of peace. But to my ex, this was the ultimate betrayal. The same man who had once stood in my driveway, carrying my bags and waiting for me, was now the one she sought for comfort. If you've ever been wronged and watched the tables turn without you having to say a word, you know the feeling. It's a mix of relief and poetic satisfaction. And if you felt that, share this with someone who needs to remember that karma doesn't always need your help. By the time my ex realized what was happening, it was too late. The trust between them had already cracked. She no longer looked at him the way she once did. Her laughter, what little remained, wasn't for him anymore. And me? I stayed silent, watching from a distance. I didn't need to confront him, didn't need to announce my victory. The truth was playing out right in front of him, and the ending,
Oh, the ending was still to come.
It happened on a warm Friday afternoon, the kind when the streets were alive with chatter and the cafes were full of people enjoying their tea and shisha. My ex-husband had been walking through one of the busiest spots in the city, the kind of place where you couldn't take 2 steps without seeing someone you knew. He was there to meet a client, or at least that's what I heard later. But fate had other plans for him that day. As he turned a corner, his eyes froze on a table by the window of a small, elegant cafe. There she was, the model, her laughter spilling out like she didn't have a care in the world. But she wasn't alone. Sitting beside her, close enough that their arms touched, was the chauffeur. They weren't hiding, they weren't glancing around to see if anyone was watching, they were holding hands openly, leaning in to whisper things that made her laugh in a way she hadn't laughed with him in months. For a moment, he stood there, stiff, like someone had punched the air out of him. His jaw tightened, and that fake, confident smile he always wore melted away. You could see the storm building in his face. Anger, shock, humiliation, all fighting for dominance. And then, in that arrogant way of his, he stormed inside. The cafe went silent the second he walked in, his voice cutting through the air. "What is this?" he demanded, his eyes darting between them. "You? With him?" He pointed at the chauffeur like he was pointing at dirt on the floor. The chauffeur didn't flinch. He didn't even raise his voice. He just looked at him calmly and said, "Do you remember how you used to treat your wife? How you'd humiliate her in front of people? How you thought she'd never walk away?" His tone was even, but his words landed like sharp knives. "You lost her because of the way you acted, and now you've lost her too." The model didn't look away. She didn't defend herself, didn't try to explain. She just sat there, her hand still resting in the chauffeur's hand, as if that alone was answer enough. A murmur spread through the cafe. People were watching, whispering, their eyes flicking between the 3 of them. Some knew the backstory. Others just enjoyed the drama unfolding like a scene from a TV series. My ex's face flushed a deep, angry red. His pride, that precious pride he had guarded more than his marriage, was crumbling in front of an audience. You see, in our culture, shame in public cuts deeper than any private insult. A man like him could survive losing money, could survive a scandal, but to stand there, surrounded by neighbors and strangers, being reminded of his mistakes in front of the woman he had tried to show off as his trophy, that was the kind of wound that never really heals. He turned on his heel and walked out, shoulders stiff, avoiding the eyes of everyone around him. No one stopped him. No one pitied him. That walk out of the cafe was the slow, heavy walk of a man realizing that all his games had finally caught up with him. When I heard about it later, and oh, trust me, news like that travels fast, I couldn't help but feel that quiet, satisfying warmth in my chest. Justice had been served without me lifting a finger. Karma had simply done its job. So if you're listening to this now, remember, life has a way of bringing the right people to their reckoning. And when it does, you don't have to fight for revenge. Just sit back, live your life, and let the story unfold. Trust me, you'll want to share it when it happens. It's been over a year since I walked away from that marriage, from the lies, the constant belittling, the feeling that my worth depended on how perfectly I smiled at his side. At first, it was hard. In our culture, a divorced woman carries whispers behind her back like a shadow, and people love to remind you of your place. But I learned quickly that my place was wherever I chose to stand, not where someone else put me. I built my own life, step by step. I opened a small online business selling handmade perfumes, the kind my grandmother used to make with rosewater and oud. My days became filled with work I loved, the scent of jasmine on my hands, and the sweet freedom of answering to no one. I had friends who respected me, a family who slowly began to see my strength instead of my failure, and most importantly, peace. Then one afternoon, while sipping tea with my cousin, she leaned in with that mischievous smile people get when they have news they can't wait to spill. "Did you hear about your ex?" she asked, drawing the words out like honey. I didn't even have to say no, she was already talking. Apparently, he'd been walking through a busy part of town when he spotted her, the model he left me for, sitting at a cafe. But she wasn't alone. She was laughing, leaning close to another man, her hand resting comfortably in his. And that man wasn't just anyone, it was his own chauffeur. People said he froze at first, like the wind had been knocked out of him. Then he stormed inside, demanding answers, his voice loud enough to turn every head. But the chauffeur, calm as ever, looked him in the eye and said, "You treated your wife like she was nothing, and now you're learning what that feels like." The model didn't defend herself, didn't even flinch. She stayed there, hand in his, as if that moment was nothing worth hiding. And my ex, he left with the weight of every staring eye on his back. In our society, public shame cuts deeper than a knife, and he'd just been carved open in front of everyone. When I heard it, I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't even feel pity. I just smiled. That small, quiet smile that comes when you know life has balanced the scales without you lifting a finger. I didn't call him. I didn't post about it. I didn't need to. My victory wasn't in taking anyone back or proving I could win. It was in knowing I had risen far above the betrayal, with my dignity intact. You see, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in watching someone lose what they took from you. It's in living so fully that they realize they never actually took anything at all. And to those listening to my story now, remember this. Trust and respect are worth more than love without them. When someone breaks those, they've already lost you. And eventually, life will make sure they know it. Karma always finds its way home, and when it does, you'll be too busy living your best life to even notice, until someone tells you the story over a cup of tea.
If my story made you smile, or maybe reminded you of your own strength, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose heart you might lift. And don't forget, there are more stories like this, stories that prove we are stronger than the storms we survive.